Yisroel Acheinu Kol Beis Yisroel
Eshboch lefanav sichi tzarasi lefanav agid. Tisha B'Av is a day of many words. It's a day of many tears. V'dimasei alechya. But the word, the most iconic word, the word of Tisha B'Av, is the word with which Yirmiyahu Hanavi begins Sefer Eicha, Sefer Kinos from the Churban Beis HaMikdash. Eicha, Eicha, Yirmiyahu cries, Eicha Yashva Badad. Where did Yirmiyahu Hanavi take this word from? Why did he start in such an interesting word? What does this word mean to Yirmiyahu Hanavi? Well, the Medrash says he took it from Yeshaya. Yeshaya also used the word when Yeshaya described not just the destruction of Yerushalayim, but the chatoyim and the sins and the moral failures of Yerushalayim. We read it in the Haftarah of Shabbos Chazon, Eicha Haisa Lizona Kirya Ne'amana. How did a city that was associated with the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu descend into chaos, descend into promiscuity? But Yeshaya Hanavi also took it from Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe not took it, but he had a sense that Moshe Rabbeinu used the same word. Moshe Rabbeinu in Parshas Devarim, Eicha esalavadi tarchachem umasachem berivchem. Chazal say, Shlosha nisnabu b'lashon Eicha. Moshe Rabbeinu, Eicha esalavadi tarchachem umasachem berivchem. Yeshayahu Hanavi, Eicha haisa lezona kirya ne'amana. And Yirmiyahu Hanavi, Eicha Yashva Badad Ha'ir Rabasiyam. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu, Yeshaya Hanavi, and Yirmiyahu Hanavi choose the word Eicha? How did they use the word Eicha? The word Eicha literally means how or where. Eicha, how are you, where are you? But sometimes you ask how when you're looking for an answer, and sometimes you ask how and you're just asking something rhetorically. You're perplexed, you're baffled. Sometimes when you see something that your mind just can't process, you say, how could this be, when you're stunned or you're confounded. Eicha is the one word that represents Jewish history, because Jewish history is not normal. Bilam, hen am, levadad yishkon, v'vagoyim lo yischashav in Parshas Balak. What does it mean, Vagoyim lo yischashav? Yischashav means the calculus. There's a calculus, there's a cheshbon. Just like there are rules that govern biology, and there are rules that govern chemistry, and there are rules that govern physics, there are rules that govern human history, anthropology, the way people live, the way nations grow, arise, and descend. Uvagoyim lo yischashav means Am Yisrael isn't beholden to those rules. They aren't influenced by those rules. The arc, the trajectory of Am Yisrael is very different. And you can sense how different, how irrational it is at every step of the way. Chazal say, Moshe Rabbeinu saw Am Yisrael during their phenomenal growth. Moshe Rabbeinu ra Yisrael b'hatzlachasam, b'chvodam. And he saw a nation that had been through so much. He saw a nation that had been enslaved in Mitzrayim, had wandered through the desert 40 years. What is such a journey? What toll does it exact on human beings? And yet, they were so populous, and they were so successful, and the population was expanding, even after all that suffering, even after all that hardship. And he said, Eicha salavadi tarchachem, you've grown so exponentially. You're such a hustling and bustling nation. Eicha, he's just flabbergasted. He's stunned that it's been 80 years, 80, 75 years since the Holocaust, and look at the growth of our people by all metrics. The growth of our nation, the growth of our communities, our ability to build our beloved Eretz Yisrael, even in the face of such hostility across the globe. The resurgence of Torah, who would have thought that 70, 80 years after the world of Europe was emasculated, that Torah would be thriving, 90,000 people celebrating Daf HaYomi. Torah hovers above history. Am Yisrael hovers above history. Moshe saw this the first, and he says, Eicha, it's stunning. It's can't make sense of it. I'm sitting in a room in my yeshiva called Yeshivat Har Etzion in the Gush area of Eretz Yisrael. And in this library, there's a room called the Amsterdam room. This is a room of Svarim, some of which are 400 or 500 years old, of a shul in Amsterdam, which disbanded about 30 years after the Holocaust, and they moved all the Svarim to the yeshiva, and there are a lot of old Svarim here. This is probably one of the newer Svarim. This is a Shas that was printed in the concentration camps. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of it. One day, 150,000, not concentration camps, Jewish DPs, dispossessed people, were under the supervision of one of the American generals, and he sensed that the Jews were forlorn. They were, even though the Allies were taking care of their needs, they were dispirited, they were demoralized. And he said, what can I do for the Jews? What can I do for the Jews? And the camp Rav of Shmuel Schneich said, why don't you go and publish in a local nearby German town, publish a Shas to show the Torah is indestructible. The Torah can be published even in the land that tried to uproot, to eliminate. This is known in certain circles as not really the Nazi Shas, but take a look at the front page. There are pictures of, you can't really see, but there are pictures of barbed wire and concentration camps and barracks and smokestacks, and that's on the front page of this Shas, and Shas actually dedicated to the United States Army, the army that showed such humanitarianism. And this Shas will remain a symbol of the indestructibility of Torah. So Moshe saw that, and he says, Eicha. And then Yeshaya saw the Jewish people, Am Yisrael, in a deplorable state. How could you? You have Beis HaMikdash, Nisim, Nevuah, Ruach HaKodesh, Malchus Beis David. How could you be so disloyal? How could you sin so terribly? How could you convert Yerushalayim, Hadom Raglav, the Makom HaShchina, into a den of scoundrels and promiscuity and theft and injustice and exploitation? How could Am Yisrael, weeks after Nasav and Ishma, weeks after the Eish on top of Har Sinai, have committed the Chet HaEgel? But that is our nature as a people. We're Amkshe Oref. That's the nature of our encounter, maybe with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the rise is so high, and the challenge sometimes when we return from Har Sinai, Shuva Lechem Le'olechem, is so difficult. So he says, it stuns me. This isn't natural. This isn't normal. Eicha, Haisa Lezona, Kirya Ne'emana. And Yirmiyahu Hanavi uses the same word when he sees the destruction. Rome conquered, Rome destroyed so many empires, so many people. But there was one nation that they pursued and whose leadership they brutally murdered and whose bodies they refused to have buried. Rome didn't want to annihilate the cultures that they conquered. They wanted to sustain them for currency, for soldiers, but something about the Jewish people. When we succeed disproportionate to other nations. Eicha Esal Avadi, we're just beyond the rational rules, the rational calculus of history. When we unravel precipitously and quickly and in ways that are just not natural. Eicha Haisa Lezona Kirya Ne'emana. And when we suffer disproportionate to other nations. Moshe Rabbeinu, Yeshaya Hanavi, Yirmiyah Hanavi all sense that this one word, Eicha, captures the irrationality of Jewish history, that Jewish history is different from other nations. And just as we fall, we rise. And just as we fall quickly, B'shetzev Ketzev, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll return to you in an instant. And we're looking forward to that return. And we've begun to see with our own eyes the tumult of history, the shifts of history, what has happened since World War II, how have we recovered, how have millions of Jews moved to Eretz Yisrael, how has Torah been replenished, how we're starting to see Eicha, that fourth baffling transformation, the baffling metamorphosis of Jewish history, of Am Yisrael. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu, Yeshaya Hanavi, and Yirmiyah Hanavi all employ the term Eicha. You'd almost call it a password to Jewish history, password to understanding how Jewish history and Am Yisrael's history is so different. Uvagoyim lo yischashav. But then there's another reason that Yirmiyah chooses the word Eicha, Yirmiyah Hanavi, to begin the word Eicha. It doesn't just borrow it from Yeshaya and quote Moshe Rabbeinu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu once used that term a long time before, thousands of years before, as the world was just created, when Adam and Chava betrayed him. The B'nai Shalom said, Ayeka, where are you? What is your place? What have you done? Right before they leave the place. Why would Yirmiyah use the same term HaKadosh Baruch Hu employed right when Adam was expelled from Gan Eden? Because leaving Yerushalayim was like leaving Gan Eden. There's a pasuk in Eicha It's in Perek Beis. Vayachmos kagan sukkah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu stripped his sukkah. Sukkah is one of the synonyms for Beis HaMikdash. He stripped it like you'd strip a garden. Literally means you cut a garden, you harvest it, you take out some flowers and fruit. But almost any time the word garden appears in Tanakh, it evokes the garden that we were once part of, the perfect world we were once part of. This is how the Medrash in Eicha darshans this pasuk Vayachmos kagan sukkah. Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Avo pasuk, Rabbi Avo is a drasha, which he quotes HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I brought you to Gan Eden, and you disobeyed. And I said Ayeka when I expelled you, and then I gave you another shot, and you built a Beis HaMikdash, Af Banav. And when you left Yerushalayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I said Ayeka again, Eicha, same word, slightly different vowel, slightly different interpretation. But when Yirmiyah says Ayeka or Eicha, he's phrasing the same bemoaning, the same sadness of Adam Harishon and Chava leaving Gan Eden. That's why Yirmiyah describes leaving Yerushalayim as leaving the garden. And that's why Yirmiyah describes it and begins it, starts it and launches it with the word Eicha, Ayeka. What does it mean that leaving Yerushalayim was like departing Gan Eden? The day that Am Yisrael left Beis HaMikdash, the day that Am Yisrael left Yerushalayim was a sad day for Am Yisrael. Was a sad day for Torah. We talk about this in some of the keynotes. Torah Chigri Sak, Marami Rottenberg's Kina Shali Srufa Ba'esh, when he saw Torah being burnt in the squares of Paris. Shali Srufa Ba'esh, and he begs Torah, please Torah, defend us in Shemayim. You yourself are being assaulted. Marami Rottenberg was living through that dark period of the Crusades and seeing all the persecution of the Jewish people, but after the Crusades and more the persecution of the Jewish people. When he saw all those shasin being burnt in a square in Paris, I think he assumed that they just couldn't print any more shasas. You'd never find another shas in France. So it was a sad day for Am Yisrael. It was a sad day for Torah. It was a sad day for the Shekhinah. Kodesh Baruch Hu's presence is eternal, is infinite, it's sweeping, you can't contain it, but his presence in this world, the Shekhinah, is very much a product of whether people accept Malchus Shemayim or whether Am Yisrael serves as the vanguard, and when Am Yisrael was it launched a period of Hester Panim in which it became difficult to sense a Kodesh Baruch Hu, Hester Panim Mihem. It's a very sad day. It's a terrible day. But it's also a terrible day for humanity. Because when Am Yisrael is residing in Israel, when Am Yisrael is living based on Nevuah and Ruach HaKodesh, when Am Yisrael is offering korbanos, the world is functioning. There's a potential for perfection. There's a potential for Gan Eden. Remember, Gan Eden is not just a place that Am Yisrael was once in. It was Adam Harishon. It was meant to be for humanity, for all humanity. And when we return to our miniature Gan Eden in Beis HaMikdash, it restores a Gan Eden capacity, a Gan Eden potential for mankind. And the day we left on Tisha B'Av, the day we left B'Tzeisi Yerushalayim, the world plummeted into a very, very dark place, literally. A few hundred years later, the Middle Ages began. You could say that since the Jews left Yerushalayim, there was a 1,500-year period that we would call a period of darkness and backwardness and regression and wars and persecution until the 1500s, until the Age of Reason, the Renaissance, technology, industrialization, the modern era. This is a punishment for humanity, and it's a particular punishment for Rome. Right around 130 AD is when Rome suppressed the Bar Kokhba rebellion, brutally murdering all the people of Beitar, not allowing their bodies to even be buried. That's around 130 AD. Around 177 AD, about 40 years later, you start to see the cracks in the Roman Empire. Commodus, which is one of the first failed Roman emperors. Rome fell because of dysfunctional leadership. And all of a sudden, it's 165, there's a plague, we're suffering a pandemic now, a plague that kills 5 million Romans. 165, 25 years, 35 years after the fall of Beitar and the fall of Bar Kokhba rebellion. And Rome, the city, is sacked 7 times in history. Why do you think there's a city that's sacked 7 times in history? Not just is Edom being avenged or revenging as Kadosh Baruch Hu avenging Edom, but the city of Rome was a tale of 2 cities. It was a contest of 2 cities. They brought the menorah to Rome. They brought Jews to Rome. They built the Colosseum in Rome. Rome was condemned to being a city that would always be under assault. In 410, the rebellion of the Visigoths, it was a European nation, probably one of the worst sacks of Rome. 410. We don't take any pleasure when human beings suffer. Hevid Serid Me'esav. Bilam himself prophesies it's not just that Edom will suffer, but the city, Serid, the remaining city, Seir, the city, the capital, will suffer. But humanity at large, even those who were innocent of the Jewish Churban, were plunged into a 1,500-year period of darkness. We call it the Dark Ages. Historians think about the year 500, more or less, to the year with the fall of Rome, till more or less the year 1000. Then there's the Middle Ages. Middle Ages were no picnic. A lot of wars, crusades, schisms, 100 Years' War. Not a pleasant place to live. Europe from the year 100 AD through the year 1500 was not a pleasant place to be, particular from 500 till 1500. The Jews have left Yerushalayim. The world is left rudderless. The capacity for human perfection has been squandered. The Jews have left Gan Eden. Ayeka, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, where is your place? You had a place, and where is that place? He tells Adam. And here's a second opportunity Hashem gave us to live in Eretz Yisrael with the Beis HaMikdash in the Makom HaShechina, and we squander that, and with that, we squander so much potential for humanity, and humanity suffered, and only in the modern era. The resurgence of the human spirit, and of course leading towards the end of days, when people will gather in Yerushalayim, recognize Malchus Hashem, acknowledge the role of Am Yisrael as representing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Harninu Gayim Amo. Those are the 2 reasons that Yirmiyahu HaNavi launches Eicha, his Megillas Eicha with the word Eicha. Number 1, because he's commenting on how different Jewish history is. Keep in mind, Rabbi Akiva saw that same calculus. Rabbi Akiva, when he saw the foxes scampering the harbais, he was consoled. He wasn't saddened, because he was saddened, but he wasn't overwhelmed with grief. Because foxes didn't scamper in anyone else's country. The Romans sustained the people that they conquered because they needed these cultures to be functional. The Romans salted the earth, burnt Yerushalayim, turned it into a barren, parched wasteland. Why? Why were they so angry? We represented HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why did Titus walk into the Beis HaMikdash, slit the paroches till it started to bleed and start to challenge? It wasn't about us. It was a Milchama with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If they could have climbed the heavens, they would have challenged Hashem, and Titus did. Rabbi Akiva realized that if the Jewish people fall so brutally and so precipitously in such a dark place, they can rise so magnificently and so quickly and so unnaturally. And we are literally living. I don't have the words to describe what it means to live through that last Gemara in Makos, to live through a transformation from the depths of suffering and the Holocaust into the world that we inhabit. And that is why Yirmiyahu and Yeshayahu and Moshe all chose that word. But the second reason he chose it is to denote and to convey that this was a loss for humanity. And we have to mourn how we failed HaKadosh Baruch Hu and how we failed in our mission. Our mission is to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to broadcast, to reflect that to B'nai Adam. Kol katzvos tevel, v'chol B'nai Adam yavrim lefonecha. And now we're just first regaining that ability to demonstrate HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Malchus, because for 2,000 years we suffered and we were sidelined and we were victimized. And now all of a sudden we have that ability to be Kadesh Shem Shemayim in the grand scale. Not to say that every mitzvah and every blot Gemara and every chesed is a Kiddush Hashem and brings more Shechina to this world, but to demonstrate it to the world at large. So think about that second meaning of Eicha, especially this year, where the world is suffering so miserably and so many people are dying and it's so dark and it's so gloomy. And that's also a product of Churban Beis HaMikdash. Because if we lived in Yerushalayim and the Shechina were flowing to humanity through Am Yisrael, the way it one day will be, there'd be no war. There'd be no famine. There'd be no violence. There'd be no injustice. There would be no illness. There'd be no plague. So, whatever humanity is suffering, we mourn for that on Tisha B'Av, because that's also something that we lost. The world changed. The world became a dark place. 1,500 years, literally. And even as humanity has pulled himself out and improved his condition, there's so much darkness to our world. So much darkness. And if we really are responsible for the world, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted us to be, Mamlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh, we're Kohen. Kohen's responsible, Zarakar Yumas. Kohen has to bear the responsibility. We have to bear that responsibility. Then it all began on Tisha B'Av. It all descended on Tisha B'Av. That is why Yirmiyahu HaNavi chose Eicha to begin his crying and to begin his sadness. And Mir Hashem, we hope that Jewish history and Am Yisrael will continue to return to Makom HaShechina. Kadosh Baruch Hu will show us his Chiba Yisera and Chibas HaKodesh and return us to the Beis HaMikdash. That ultimately all human suffering will dissipate, will fade. And V'yeda kol pol ki ata pialto. V'yomar kol asher neshama be'apo Hashem Elokei Yisrael Melech u'malchuso b'kol mashala mehera yibana Beis HaMikdash mehera v'yameinu im bias Mashiach tzidkenu b'Yishalayim yirkachenu.
Yirachem aleihem v'yotziem mitzvah